A childhood game in a rural village usually echoes with laughter, but as this shadow stretches forward, swallowing the dirt and the sunlight, the atmosphere shifts into something much colder. In the summer of 1965, a 15-year-old boy named Prasad traveled from Pune to visit his family's village of Amravati. Surrounded by a massive group of 15 local kids, he spent his days roaming the wide-open fields. Their favorite activity was a marathon version of hide-and-seek. The matches spanned huge swaths of the village and lasted for hours. The rules were strict. Stay within the designated boundaries, and you had a maximum of 30 minutes to stay in one hiding spot before moving on. Deep within those designated game boundaries sat a massive, decaying stone haveli. It was a sprawling, opulent mansion that had been abandoned for years. The village kids completely ignored it, avoiding its heavy wooden doors at all costs. Prasad calculated his path to a total victory. He realized that if he wanted to guarantee no one would find him, he had to walk directly into the one building everyone else was terrified to search. Ramesh buried his face against a stone pillar and started counting backward from 100. The 14 other kids frantically scattered across the village, ducking behind walls and sprinting into alleyways. Prasad broke away from the chaotic stampede. He walked away from the bright summer sunlight and approached the rotting entrance of the sprawling haveli. As he stepped inside, the afternoon heat vanished. The chaotic shouting of his friends was completely choked out, replaced by a suffocating, dead silence. By crossing that threshold, Prasad was no longer part of a supervised summer vacation. He was alone in a structure that offered no guarantee of safety. He crept into a massive, darkened hall and wedged himself behind a broken wooden almirah. He crouched there in the heavy shadows, enduring 25 minutes of unbroken silence. Hearing no footsteps approaching from the outside, Prasad figured the seeker had given up. He cracked a smile, ready to stand up, step out of the dust, and claim his win. But as he pushed himself up, he glanced toward the back corner of the room. Sitting perfectly rigid on a wooden cot was an old man, dressed in a stark white dhoti and vest. Prasad froze, asking the man how long he had been sitting there in the dark. The old man stared forward with hollow eyes. His voice was unnatural, a deep, guttural scrape, as he replied, "I'm hiding too. For years, nobody has been able to find me." Pure panic took over. Prasad ulted toward the light. As his foot cleared the main exit, the heavy wooden doors violently slammed shut behind him, shaking the entire frame. Prasad's attempt to secure a hiding spot had physically disturbed an entity that had been trapped in permanent, violent isolation. Safely outside in the afternoon sun, Prasad was hyperventilating. He tracked down his friends and frantically explained exactly who he had just seen sitting on that cot. The blood drained from the face of his friend, Anil. He explained the history of that property. Decades ago, a local man murdered his family and buried them beneath the floors of that haveli. The killer then locked himself inside. Weeks later, an overpowering stench of rotting flesh drifted into the streets. The villagers eventually broke down the doors, but they found absolutely nothing. No bodies and no old man. The rest of the boys thought Prasad was trying to trick them. Driven by disbelief and morbid curiosity, all 15 teenagers marched straight back to the haveli to prove him wrong. The boys walked back into the dark to test if the terrifying local folklore was real. The group huddled tightly together as they pushed open the heavy doors. They crept into the room Prasad had described and stared at the back corner. The cot was completely empty, but the atmosphere inside the room had shifted. The air was now incredibly thick, carrying the heavy scent of rotting meat, causing several of the boys to immediately gag. Prasad covered his nose and cautiously stepped toward the empty cot. He looked down at the wooden floorboards, which were caked in decades of heavy, undisturbed dust. The rot was physical and undeniable. It meant that the stories about this house were no longer just rumors. The source of that smell was still present. Stamped directly into that thick dust, right next to the cot, were the deep, fresh indentations of bare human feet. Prasad and his 14 friends were all wearing shoes. Suddenly, an icy wind sliced through the stifling heat of the room. Before Prasad could shout, he felt the heavy pressure of a physical hand grab his shoulder. A freezing whisper brushed directly against his ear. "If you want, you can stay and hide with me." Prasad slowly turned toward the shadows and saw two glowing red eyes staring back at him. Prasad screamed. Total auditory chaos erupted. The boys scrambled over each other, trampling through the halls in terror as they fled the Haveli and sprinted back to their homes. Decades have passed since that summer afternoon, but Prasad still lives with the certainty that the entity never left. It remains trapped in that dark Haveli, eternally waiting for the next player to come hide.